Okay, hello. So today's lighting might look a little bit strange. I'm in California and the sky looks like I'm in Tatooine. Hopefully it's going to be temporary. So if you're new to the channel, I use data science to answer questions that are mostly stupid, sometimes serious, and I think today's question is stupid.
Okay, for all you smooth brains out there, I am not calling iDubbbz stupid. I'm saying that it's stupid to waste hours of your time into doing a data analysis of iDubbbz's work, which it objectively is. So, if anything, this is a self-roast.
So today I'm talking about iDubbbz and his flagship series, Content Cop. In each episode of Content Cop, iDubbbz will criticize a creator or a genre of content on YouTube with really well thought out, original, and structured arguments, skits, and he just generally goes to lengths that other commentary YouTubers do not. So because of all of those reasons, each episode of Content Cop that comes out is treated like an event. They get millions of views within hours, and whoever the poor unfortunate soul is to be featured in a Content Cop, the entire YouTube community just makes sure that person is the butt of everyone's jokes. And that can last a day, a week, a month, depending on how long that backlash lasts. And some people think that having a Content Cop made on you can be a career ender. So I wanted to use data science to analyze whether or not Content Cop truly kills careers and lives up to that reputation. And in this analysis, I'm only focusing on the individual creators that are featured in Content Cop because it's a bit difficult to quantify genres of content. Okay, if you've ever tried to use the YouTube API, you'll know that you can only get current subscriber counts from it, and you can't go back in time and get past data for subscriptions. So thank God Social Blade exists, which keeps track of all of those counts and all of the data I could ever need since the channel's inception. However, when GDPR passed in 2018, it meant that Social Blade could only make data from the last 3 years publicly available. And because each episode of Content Cop came out more than 3 years ago, I had to use an alternative approach. So I actually got the data for this analysis from archived URLs of Social Blade, and I used a handy little Wayback Machine for those. So the first thing I wanted to visualize was the daily change in subscribers for each of the creators that were featured in a Content Cop. And I visualized this for 1 month before the Content Cop's release date and 1 month after the Content Cop's release date. So here's the graph. Wow, that's pretty crazy. I bet I don't even need to annotate where the Content Cop's release date is. But yes, of course it's right at 30, right in the middle. And I should note there might be other factors at play here. With the Fine Bros, for example, the Content Cop was released amid a big controversy that a lot of other people were talking about, so it's not just the Content Cop that had this profound effect. But the impact that's being demonstrated here is undeniable, in my opinion. And I'll dive into each of the creators and their trajectories later on in the video, but the big takeaway from this graph is that each one of these guys suffered because of the Content Cop, directly. One flaw in this graph, though, is that the channels are varying sizes. The Fine Bros, for example, is a massive channel and had about 14 million subscribers at the time. Jinx, on the other hand, only had about 1 million. So let's normalize those numbers, shall we? This graph that you're seeing now shows the percent change in subscribers for each day for each of the creators from 1 month before the Content Cop and 1 month after, just like before. The previous graph showed the absolute change, though. This is percent. And you can see some pretty profound dips in subscriber growth for the Fine Brothers, for Tana Mongeau, for Ricegum, for Leafy, and you can see stagnation for Jinx and HowToPRANKItUp. And Keem is a little bit weird. We'll get to him later. But before you get too excited by this data, like, holy shit, iDubbbz is a god, I knew it, he totally destroyed those channels. Cool your jets. I wanted to look at the percent change in subscribers from the first day that we're tracking. So again, 1 month before the Content Cop's release. And you can see that most of these channels did grow in the long run. Most of them were able to recover and start making positive gains even only 1 month after the Content Cop was released. And to drive this point even further, this is a graph of the total subscriber count for each of the channels. If you're at a point where you can have a Content Cop made on you, you probably have a pretty big channel. So any subs that you lose might not make a noticeable dent in your overall trajectory. But that's definitely not true for everyone, and some of these channels took some pretty big hits that definitely impacted their long-term growth. So for the next chunk of my analysis, I analyzed each channel's subscriber and view data over a longer period of time than just the month before and the month after the Content Cop's release date. First up, Jinx. So here's the daily subscribers and views gained for Jinx. Please make note of the dual axes and the respective scales. So Jinx made reaction videos and was widely criticized for adding no valuable or entertaining input. At the time, heavy hitters on YouTube like PewDiePie, Grade A Under A, I Hate Everything, and of course Jack's Films were criticizing Jinx, so iDubbbz was by no means the only one doing this. The Jinx Content Cop came out on December 13th, 2015, in the midst of all of this controversy. So it's hard to determine if the Content Cop was the cause of Jinx's decline. It was just slowly becoming this general consensus that Jinx sucked ass. However, on February 3rd, 2016, iDubbbz made a video called Rip Jinx. And the next day, Jinx announced that he was going to quit making reaction videos. And in this chart, you can see that not only did he lose a lot of subs because of this announcement, but he also lost views. And that means he privated or deleted a lot of videos, deleting 30 million worth of views on one day. What are you trying to hide, Jinx? And he's still uploading, but the views are pretty pathetic. Okay, next up, the Fine Brothers. So in January of 2016, the Fine Brothers announced their intention to trademark the React video format. It was a massive controversy. Everyone was clowning on them. And in fact, the iDubbbz Content Cop wasn't about that decision so much as it was about the response and the backlash and the memes surrounding the announcement video. And you can see this in the chart. The Fine Bros were losing subs before iDubbbz's Content Cop even came out. He added fuel to the fire, but certainly didn't start it. That was all in the Fine Brothers and their impossibly dumb idea. And if we go back to the total growth chart, the Fine Brothers is the only channel where the loss of subscribers makes a noticeable dip in their overall growth. They ended up losing around 700,000 subscribers, but also they're a massive channel. They regained those subs by May of the same year and are still going very strong. And I'm sure many kids still dream of going on their channel and sharing their boring, uninformed opinions. Okay, Keemstar. So similar to Jinx and the Fine Brothers, Keemstar was widely disliked before iDubbbz made his Content Cop. But iDubbbz's approach for the Keemstar Content Cop was very different from the other two. And it was unlike anything we had seen when it came to criticism of Keem. So anyone who had been following the drama had seen videos of Keem very aggressively saying the N-word, yelling at his fans, and those videos were horrible and should be condemned. But they weren't doing much in terms of swaying the opinion of Keemstar's audience. iDubbbz, in his Content Cop, attacked the content that Keem was making, not Keem himself, and gave them a reason to unsubscribe. And unsubscribe they did. For the first time in Keemstar's long history of controversy and backlash against him, that was actually coupled with a loss of subscribers. On the flip side of the coin, though, his views skyrocketed. And you can see both of those effects more clearly in the monthly chart. But of course, his channel is built on drama and sensationalism, and this was never really going to cut him to the ground. Although iDubbbz's videos are well thought out, a fair chunk of his audience only watches him for the drama, and Keem also offered that drama. So he was in a unique position where he was actually able to capitalize off of this. HowToPRANKItUp, as the name implies, made prank tutorials. They were awful, not effective or practical, far too time-consuming, and iDubbbz pointed all of that out in his Content Cop. And HowToPRANKItUp didn't see an immediate decline after the Content Cop, but his channel growth stagnated and eventually dropped off into irrelevancy, which is arguably worse than what happened to Keemstar or the Fine Brothers, because how do you bounce back from that? His last upload was 7 months ago, but maybe he'll make a big return. Anything's possible. Speaking of big returns, the saga of Leafy's channel deserves its own analysis, and my god, there's many out there. The Content Cop on Leafy is by far the most popular, and part of why it was so devastating to Leafy is that Ian anticipated all of his possible responses and used his style of video against him to highlight just how shitty of content it is. Leafy's fanbase was young and malleable. So Ian appealed to them by employing a lot of the tactics that Leafy did in his videos, like mocking his appearance, mocking his voice, mocking his intelligence level. The rest, as we say, is history. Leafy got bullied off of his own channel. He was losing subs daily since he announced his decision to no longer make videos, and it would stay that way until 2020 when the world collectively became insane and some people started to subscribe to Leafy again. And suddenly the perfect storm of iDubbbz's content cop against him being removed and iDubbbz suddenly being caught in his own controversy created an opening for Leafy to return to YouTube and then immediately have his channel terminated. And when people say that iDubbbz is a career killer, I think they're thinking of Leafy. Like, damn, the sudden rise and fall of his channel, which is better illustrated in the monthly chart, just shows that this content cop was really the nail in the coffin for him and that style of videos. Good riddance. The Tana Mongeau content cop is definitely the black sheep of the series. The previous creators had somewhat of the same fan base as iDubbbz, or at least some amount of overlap. Not the case here. In fact, I don't think he would have even made this video if she hadn't made that tweet. But yeah, not only is Tana's content cop different because of her fan base, but also because of Ian's approach in it. Ian's stance on the N-word is controversial and, in my opinion, pretty flawed. I'm not going to go into all the details of why I think that, but his statement of it's either all okay or none of it's okay can be pretty easily misinterpreted to mean that all uses of the N-word is okay, which I hope is not what he's saying. And ultimately, to me, it shows no forethought or consideration of his platform and how his statements will be interpreted by his young audience, or perhaps even extrapolated to more sinister beliefs. But whatever, I'm sure that won't come back to bite him in the ass. I bring this up because the main arguments in previous installments of the series were non-controversial and pretty much universally agreed upon, as far as things on the internet go. And this episode wasn't attacking Tana's content like previous episodes did, but it was attacking her character and behavior outside of YouTube. There was a tiny bit about how she exaggerated truths in her story times, but there's not a single person on this planet who took that as the biggest criticism from the video. Part of why the content cops are so successful is that Ian uses the same tactics as the channel he's criticizing to somewhat appeal to their fan base and perhaps win them over to his side. That did not happen here, and that's probably why the content cop didn't have that much of a negative impact on her channel. That's not to say it didn't have any impact, because it did. People forget that before this drama and the content cop, Tana was really experiencing unprecedented levels of growth and was on track to become a massive YouTube star, like way bigger than she is today. She still lost subscribers, but quickly regained them. The amount by which she was gaining subscribers after the fact, though, was much smaller than what she had been gaining before. She also hardened her reputation after this. She stopped caring so much about what other people thought, was saying and doing batshit crazy stuff on her channel for views, dropped this persona of I don't go to parties, I'm a goody-goody. It's just interesting to think of the type of channel she might have or the type of person she might be if she hadn't faced this massive wave of backlash from people outside of her little YouTube bubble and people who, let's be honest, were never going to like her content anyway. Not that I watch her content, but for this video, I watched a sampling of videos from each of the creators that were focused on in a content cop, and I saw the starkest difference in her content. Like, it really did change in tone from before the content cop and after. And then Ricegum. So Ricegum lost the most subscribers, second to the Fine Brothers, at just above 52,000. He also saw a huge spike in views, thanks to having that diss track hot and ready. And yes, Ricegum is still kicking and still thriving. He's losing subs more so than he's gaining nowadays, but is still getting millions of views from kids, and as we all know, kids are the most lucrative demographic out there, so I'm sure he's fine. The real winner in all of this, though, is iDubbbz. You can see in the graph that with each content cop that is dropped, his channel sees a spike in views and subscribers, and that's especially true with the Leafy, Tana, and Ricegum installments. So given everything the series has done for the channel, why has he stopped making them? Part of why he stopped, I think, is because he's an adult.
As a 30-year-old man.
And it's a little bit cringe to be talking about YouTube drama and to make that your career as an adult.
I mean, I'm getting old.
But I think there's more to it. In comedy, there's this idea of punching down, and it's something you never want to do. Content Cop has reached a stage where each episode is an event, and for that moment, the entire internet dogpiles on this one person. And yes, a big part of iDubbbz's brand is being somewhat divorced from emotions, apathetic, you might say. But I can't imagine that his videos letting this happen to someone doesn't affect him.
It's one of the reasons that I kind of dislike some of the commentary channels out there is when they go in really hard, I'm like, you need to interact with these people that you make fun of in real life just to be reminded of what you're actually doing, kind of thing.
Right.
And also, the world of commentary on YouTube is a whole different ballgame now. iDubbbz used to be the king of commentary, but now the genre has been taken over by former Viners. It's so much more comedy-driven, thought-driven, emotion-driven nowadays than it was during the peak of iDubbbz's career. And in fact, this video was originally going to be an analysis of the evolution of the commentary genre, but I thought the statistics surrounding Content Cop were so interesting that I had to break it out into its own video. But definitely subscribe if that seems interesting to you. I imagine that I will have that video out shortly. Conclusions: Content Cop definitely had impact both on the people it featured and on YouTube as a whole, YouTube regulations, YouTube community, YouTube drama. I'm not going to get into that too much here because I'm going to save it for my evolution of commentary video. So stay tuned.